So we're back with yet another Percy Jackson episode. This time, the penultimate episode, we find out the truth. Sort of. Which chronicles the adventures of our trio deep into the Underworld to meet with Hades and confront him about everything he's supposedly done, only for the actual truth to begin to come out. And before we go any further, I've been very vocally quite open to a lot of the changes that have occurred from book to screen in the previous episodes, and I've tried to be fair that a lot of these changes have actually been for the best. But here, there were a lot of choices that did leave me a little bit baffled. Lots of choices that I personally don't think were the right call and hampered my enjoyment of things. And yeah, I do think there was a bit of discontent surrounding this episode, especially since we're coming into the finale now. But yeah, I guess we'll see where all of that goes. And so, let's just jump into things, shall we? Okay, so we start out the episode with a scene that I did not really like all that much. We see Percy enter the waterbed store, meet his half-brother Procrustes, and then instead of being taken by surprise and Percy proving himself to be quick-witted and cunning by fooling Krusty into getting caught in his own trap and then killing him, I'm pretty sure, they just tie him up in the bed and leave him there. Like, it was great to have him appear, but I feel like the kids know everything. There's no peril here whenever they do something because they already know about it. It makes them look way too intelligent and OP because there's no real stakes. Plus, the fact that Hermes let them know about this and thus they had their strategy ready to go, it takes away from Percy's arc here. Because in the book, this is a big moment. He shows off he's a true hero, and also that he's a rather ruthless person when he has to be. He decides that this guy deserves to die because he's a serial killer. He had him tied up. He didn't need to kill him, technically. But he does make that hard choice because he thinks it's for the best. But this felt cheap. Like, yeah, it makes sense that Hermes would tell them about this crazy guy that wants to kill them, but still, it makes it less interesting. That being said, the actual layout of the shop, the design, the way the beds are set up, that dingy vibe, it all felt straight off the page to me. This is what I imagined, just not the story part of it. I did enjoy Annabeth's banter later on about, don't make me come back down there, but for the most part, the scene was a miss for me. Also, I did just reread the scene in the book, and to anyone else, is Percy just less funny in this adaptation? Like, he does make some jokes, he has some good moments and quips, but I really miss his inner thoughts. They were so funny and goofy. It really does feel like they've toned down a lot of that humour. The modernizations the gods do, DOA Studios, Hermes Delivery Service, Hephaestus TV, they were all goofy but funny, and a lot of them have been stripped down from the adaptation for the most part. Almost like he's embarrassed of them. And it's pretty sad, honestly. And then we head into the Underworld. We then get a little more of that scene that we saw Hermes hint at during the casino scenes last episode, talking about how Percy and his mum hurt each other, with Percy in the car, looking quite forlorn. So we see that Percy's no longer at his old school, and his mum's sending him to a new one an hour outside the city, where I guess he's going to be staying, so it's a boarding school. And yeah, he doesn't take it well. He screams at his mum, she's upset, he locks her out of the car, she screams at him, and it's all very sad all round. It's really a lot different to the dynamic that you see in the book, but I think this is an example in this episode of a really good change, because it makes her more human, more real. It adds a lot of layers to their dynamic. This poor woman's been through so much, she's just trying to keep her kid alive. But of course, he wouldn't understand this, and it's just so tragic. We then cut to the Underworld, which looks suitably epic. And yeah, I was really excited for this sequence. I found the stuff with Charon. Is his name Charon? Charon? I think it's Charon. Charon? Charon. Ugh, I'm just gonna say Charon. I found the stuff with Charon and his suits and his desire for a pay rise really fun in the book. Like, it was so unexpected and so goofy, but made a lot of sense. So it was cool to see that play out on screen. Until it wasn't cool to see it play out on screen because they cut that shit out mostly. They removed so many of the silly jokes in the Underworld. They made it so much more serious, removed all those interesting dynamics, and the silly and goofy bureaucracy of it all. Lame. That's all you can say, lame. I get they were probably pressed for time, but my god, why kill off the charm of the place? The whole joke is that it's the land of the dead, and so you expect it to be bleak and scary, and it does look that way, but then you meet the ferryman, and he's just a stiff in a suit. Ugh, I hated this part. Although Percy did have some good quips in the scene nonetheless. Also, side note, if you're going to go to the ultra secret entrance to avoid attention, why would you then follow this up with trying to go in the regular pathway? It feels very much counterintuitive. Also, Charon usually lets living people in, right? As long as they pay the price for his ferry. It's literally in every Greek underworld myth, isn't it? Come on now. What are you changing that for? And so yeah, they meet him, and he calls Cerberus, and we begin a brief chase sequence where Grover is straight up eaten, but doesn't die apparently. I guess the dog's trained to carry people in its mouths. But what for, to kick them out? Bit merciful, considering how merciless most of the monsters have been so far. And then Annabeth is able to instantly knock this thing out by scratching one of its necks. I've got to say, I had a big problem with this. Like, it's apparently such a nice scratch that it makes the dog fall asleep, yeah? But I just don't buy it. Because look at the ratio of neck to hand. That's a normal person's hand. And a normal person's hand is capable of taking down a normal-sized Rottweiler. I could see that putting a regular dog to sleep. But to me, the size difference here makes this the equivalent of a baby scratching a Rottweiler with the tip of their little baby pinky finger. It ain't gonna send the dog to snoozeville. So yeah, nah. And then on top of that, Grover's not dead. You know, he couldn't be dead. He's necessary for the plot. But still, he manages to force the giant dog's mouth open himself. How strong is Grover? Because that would be so absurdly heavy. Like, my God. And then on top of that, somehow he's lost his pearl inside the dog. And how? The bro is in cargo shorts. They have deep pockets. No chance he lost it. They should have just had him lose it when he's getting sucked into Tartarus or something like that. I feel like that would have made a bit more sense. But okay, whatever. Also, Annabeth is apparently a pinpoint thrower now. If she wasn't a demigod, a baseball career is in her future. Because while she's good at throwing the ball, she's also able to tell where Percy is and get him the squeaky toy with one throw, whilst being down below and blinded by fog, impenetrable fog. My God, and then when Cerberus does jump up, she leaps off. Check out the grip strength on this kid. Look how quickly the dog appears and then leaves again in this scene. But she's able to leap off the neck and land on the wall and grip onto like a tiny crack. Because that's just a smooth vertical face pretty much. Oh, what a beast. And then they manage to ditch the dog by chucking the ball in the river Styx, and on they go. And then we get our first look at Hades' cool palace, which does indeed look very, very awesome. Although, I don't know, in general, I'm not really a massive fan of just how edgy they made the Underworld. Yes, it should be bleak, but at the same time, I think having variety is key, and there just isn't any variety here. It's pretty much just a Mordor clone, or the Upside Down from Stranger Things. It's a bit generic for my tastes. But that being said, the Upside Down Castle, that was a pretty damn cool visual. We then move on to see the next part of the Percy-Sally flashback, this time where the school's trying to reject him from being admitted, with Sally fighting hard to allow him to go there, all of which Percy can hear, which in turn makes him feel majorly rejected, as if his mother doesn't love him and wants to get rid of him. And God, this made me very, very sad. Like, I get it, but God damn it, close the door! Poor kid, imagine hearing this guy pretty much call you troubled. Too troubled for the school with a special program for troubled kids. And on top of that, you hear your mum being so deeply against homeschooling you and keeping you around. Damn. And this whole scene, I was kind of expecting Poseidon to just walk past, close the door, and get him admitted to the school, but, you know, not yet. Also, just great acting from the little dude as well, I thought. So good. Hope they bring him back for season 2. Then we return to the gang, where Grover's trying his best to convince them that he should be the one who remains behind because he lost his pearl. And once again, Percy decides it's going to be him. And they just decide to let him keep doing this shit. Like, at a certain point, surely it becomes clear that a child of the big three is a little bit more important than a satyr, right? Let's say Hades murders Percy straight up because he doesn't escape with the pearl. You don't think that would make the burgeoning God War a million times worse? Like, oh, hey little brother, I just killed one of your favorite kids. We good? And these two gotta stop going along with Percy's insane self-sacrifice arc. And then we get to Asphodel, which, yeah, they've upped the spooky factor for this one, didn't they? Like in the book, I think you see it differently based on who you are. Percy sees people all crowded around as if gathering for a concert that will never start, which he found very depressing. And I think Grover saw it like a big empty field in Kansas or something like that. But here, it's just like the Forbidden Forest in Harry Potter, with all the mist and creepy vibes. Also, I gotta say, writers and designers, they must have watched Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone before they made this episode, I swear to God. We can discount Cerberus, because obviously that's a one-to-one Greek myth recreation. Fluffy's based on that. Although them escaping by putting it to sleep, you know, that does resemble Harry Potter to me. When we meet Charon, he's cosplaying as Voldemort, drinking unicorn blood in the Forbidden Forest. The fields of Asphodel, yes, the fields, or the meadows in some Greek myths, because we're talking about a flower meadow, that's what the whole point is, not a giant forest, is now a Forbidden Forest cosplay with all the souls that wander there in the land of neutrality and purgatory pretty much, turned into Voldemort clones. Annabeth then gets pinned down by Devil's Snare, or whatever it is, and the pair are forced to leave her behind, like Harry and Hermione have to leave Ron behind in the book. Here, Annabeth and Ron, they both do the whole heroic sacrifice, leave me behind sort of thing. Tartarus and the Flying Shoes, well, that one's not really got any 1-to-1, but it did make me think of the Flying Keys. And then the Hades Kronos villain fake out is the Greek god version of the Snape Quirrell fake out. Also, I guess the plan is to get access to a powerful artifact which can help restore a fallen, disembodied enemy to power. The Lightning Bolt and the Philosopher's Stone with Kronos and Voldemort. It's definitely got some similarities, I'm telling you what. Not that I necessarily think it's a bad thing, it's just something I did notice. Anyway, they talk about how everybody in Asphodel is bound by regret. But isn't Asphodel the standard afterlife in Greek mythology? And only the real Gigachads get into Elysium, and the trash go to Tartarus? Yeah? So this is just the normal place. This? Damn, that is bleak. Anyway, despite not being dead and most people having lots of regrets, I mean, remember how Grover regrets not saving Thalia, for instance? Annabeth, for some reason, gets got, and they have to leave her behind before Cerberus turns up to eat them, with her using the pearl to escape. Honestly, I'm not sure why they did this. Didn't really change anything, but I guess it was so Percy would be the one to figure out the Kronos plot. Because realistically, I think Annabeth would have cottoned on a lot faster. Plus, it sets up her regret storyline. Regretting running away. We'll see how that all pans out. I wonder how they're going to have her deal with her dad in that situation. It's been years since she saw him. In the book, I felt like it stretched believability that she'd go back so quickly. So we'll see. I kind of hope they add a bit of nuance there, because I never thought he sounded like a particularly good parent. And I don't think forgiveness should be on the table just yet. And so, yeah, they leave her there, and they do frame it as this big emotional moment. But we all know that Cerberus, he hadn't eaten her. She was never in any danger. They even showed us the pearl, so it's not really sad because there was no stakes, and they do this too much. They try to make these emotional moments that have no stakes at all, desperately trying to replicate the Sally Jackson sacrifice versus the Minotaur from episode 1, but they can't do it because we're not going to see one of the big three get killed here. Anyway, Cerberus then gets scared and stops following them in the sand dunes because Kronos is scary and Tartarus, who is a primordial, is also scary, and he wants no part of that shit, and fair enough, mate. And I gotta say, Percy and Grover, they have very impressive fitness to have walked so far across those sand dunes without looking tired at all. Like, I'm just very impressed by this. And I mean, when you see that big wide shot of just how far they've walked from the forest, my god, that is some Lord of the Rings level trekking, son. Good on them indeed. Get those steps in. And so it's at this point that Grover's almost dragged down into the pit by the shoes that Luke gave Percy, and I wonder if this is enough to tip off the casuals about Luke's true allegiance. Like, at this stage, he feels like a pretty irrelevant character in terms of his screen time, so a good chance it does go over a lot of heads, but still I'm pretty curious. Also, just the size of the pit, man, gives you the willies, huh? Would be a shame if somebody fell down there at some point in the future, huh?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
And I actually rather enjoyed this bit. This is how you build drama. Not pointless sacrifice fake-outs, but by having characters endure true peril. Good stuff. Although I did laugh at Percy just stopping mid-chase to stare at the absolute size of this thing as Grover's screaming for help and getting sucked in ever closer. Like, come on, Percy. It's not the time, son. And then they hear a thud in Percy's bag, and what do you know? They have the Master Bolt in there. And I gotta say, they were in the back of that truck, heading to Las Vegas from St. Louis for like a day. Did they never open the backpack to see what he gave them? Or did this just magically reveal itself? Oh well, I guess we just have to accept it. Also, massive Chad energy when Grover tells Percy that Zeus can shove it, and they're gonna save Sally instead. Gotta say, it's about time for this demigod protector, or whatever he's supposed to be, to start pulling his weight. I love the character and the portrayal, but useful he is not. We then get a further look at the Percy-Sally flashback, which was very sad, and I really like the way they portrayed this, with her being a struggling parent who's frightened that her son's going to get eaten by some monster someday, and that his demigod nature is starting to impact his life, his social life, his school life. These scenes did a really great job in fleshing out the dynamic between the two, and their own personal development, whilst also just adding a lot of depth, especially to Sally, because in the book she seems perfect, and like she has it all together. She is even willingly abused, just to protect her son from monsters tracking him. She's such a hero. But here they show the real struggle, the sadness, the grief, the pain, and I like that. It made her more realistic, a great addition to the storyline, and just really great performances all round. Loved it. And then we come to some humour again. The meeting with Hades. Our duo make their way into the super creepy and not nice inhospitable palace. And like, I get it, he's the king of the underworld, but does he just not want to live in comfort at all? Maybe he can't change the environment of the underworld, but my god, man, build a nicer lair. Ugh. No insulation, no warmth, absolute trash design. Get some cushions on that chair. Get the man from Grand Designs in here. He'll sort things out. Anyway, they ascend to the throne room and meet Hades, who, well, he ain't how I remember reading him. And look, that's fine, right? Good performance, genuinely funny, but I do miss that OG portrayal. The long-suffering brother who's routinely ignored and forgotten until they need his help, and who objectively has the worst job of the major gods. He's stuck looking after the Underworld, which only keeps growing in size and scope and bureaucracy as more and more people are born and die. While Zeus gets to be king of the sky and Poseidon gets the sea, he's stuck with everybody who dies. And I found that rather amusing in the book, his complaints, his annoyance at it all. But here, he acts like he's the ruler of a paradise realm with no responsibilities, and that makes him less fun. Once again, it just feels like one of those little things that's been removed that takes away some of the charm. Like, yeah, this whole scene just didn't do it for me. And Percy figuring out the Kronos thing, I felt it was a bit contrived. And also, like, if Hades wants the bolt, because now he's scared that Kronos is going to come back, Daddy's going to smack his bottom raw, surely he can move very fast. Why is he not trying to stop Percy escaping? Why doesn't he use his death powers or something? I don't know. No? Also, here we learn that Hades has his helm stolen too, and he thought it was Percy, but it's clear that something else is at work now. And I wonder who it could be. Yeah, so Percy has to leave behind his mum and come back for her later, and the pair use the pearls and escape the underworld and land on a beach ready for the clash with Ares. And also, I gotta say, that scene with Hades was 6 minutes of talking that went nowhere. Not the best written scene of all time, let's be real, but the acting did save it. I like the performances there. We then finish up the Sally and Percy sequence with Sally walking off to pay, and then summoning Poseidon by burning the milkshake, the ice cream, whatever it was. He then enters, and I'll be honest, this scene felt like a bit of an anticlimax. It doesn't accomplish anything, doesn't say anything useful, he has a weird voice, and he doesn't go to see Percy. Is this seriously his first scene in the show? Man, every one of these flashbacks was so good. This final one didn't hit for me. I feel like it could have been better. Sally definitely carried the scene with her acting and her dialogue. Although, Poseidon's facial expressions, his grief about not being able to interact with Percy, I did think that was good. I just don't think he had any good scripting here. He needs better dialogue. And then we finish on the beach with Ares striding towards them, ready for the big fight, get hyped, oh my god, yes, 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 and then the episode ends. So, yeah. That's the end of the episode, really, and I was a bit more mixed on this episode than usual. It was still fun, I still enjoyed it, and I'm still really hyped for the next one, but I just think it could have been a lot better. And so, yeah, with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? You like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.